Through this golden door, under the gaze of that mother of exiles, has come millions of men and women who first set foot on American soil. These families came here to work. They came to build. Others came to America in different ways from other lands under different and often harrowing conditions. They came to make America work. They didn't ask what this country could do for them, but what they could do to make this refuge the greatest home of freedom in history. They brought with them courage, ambition, and the values of family, neighborhood, work, peace, and freedom. But restoring the American dream requires more than restoring a productive economy. It requires a return to spiritual and moral values. We shall continue to be a symbol of freedom and guardian of the eternal values that so inspired those who came. Let us pledge to each other that we can, and so help us God, we will make America great again.
Barry. After that D-list Reagan imitation last night, he wanted to give everybody a taste of the real deal. Thank you guys for being on the RVAT live stream. I'm Tim Miller, RVAT's esteemed political director. I'm with Sarah Longwell. I'm not even sure what your title is. Founder, Empress of Republican Voters Against Trump.
Queen, whatever.
Queen Sarah. And I'm just so happy to be here with Olivia Troye, who you all know now from her constant cable television presence, which has been very valuable and needed, and which we're so grateful for her voice. And I'm so happy that we can do this, talk a little bit about the news and what's been going on with her since she had the courage to come out of the administration. So thanks, Olivia, for doing this.
Thank you.
Hi. So first, there's news today in the New York Times, failing New York Times, about the way that the COVID task force, which you worked on, allowed is maybe a little too nice of a word, politics to intervene, particularly the political staff working for VP Pence. For people who haven't read the story, just want to talk a little bit about that and what your experience was and why that was so frustrating and problematic. Olivia?
Having a little bit of a technical difficulty. I'm gonna disconnect and dial right back in.
Okay, that's all right. Me and Sarah will talk about the debate then.
I can hear you now, actually.
Okay, great. So the New York Times story about the politicization, that's always a hard word for me, of the COVID task force. Talk about what you saw there, what your experience, why that was troubling, and for people who may not have seen the story yet.
Well, so the story kind of takes you behind the scenes of the vice president's staff and the task force. And I was, a key member of the vice president's team. I was his lead advisor for the task force. I did all the coordination for a lot of the meetings and a lot of the interagency coordination as well. I worked very closely with the task force members. And the story basically gives you a little more insight on sort of what it was really like behind the scenes in terms of the political dynamics and the influence of some of the senior White House officials and how they were sort of behaving behind the scenes. And, the story covers whether it was, meatpacking plants that were struggling with outbreaks and what happened with that and the influence that they had on it. It also talks about the Mayo Clinic incident, and I call it an incident because that's actually a visit that I was really passionate about. I had worked hard to put that together with people at the Mayo Clinic that I have the utmost respect for. They had been doing incredible research there on convalescent plasma and whether it would be used as a possible, tool in the toolkit, as we like to say, against COVID. It was important to get donors to donate plasma at the time because we knew we would need it this fall and in the winter when cases would likely spike again. And this was something that all the doctors agreed that it was at least something that would be something valuable for the vice president to contribute to. And I thought that it would be a good message and just encourage it. And instead, I remember just being very sad that night, sad and angry, to be very honest. It was about, it mostly became about the vice president and about him not wearing a mask at a medical facility, which was wrong. And I felt like I had failed him as a staffer because I felt like I just couldn't win against these influences. I was there. Dr. Hahn was on the trip with us. And that was just one very clear example of sort of the political influence of a situation where they didn't want these political images, well, they didn't want these images of the vice president in a mask. They thought it would, be used against him politically. The focus was once again on the election, but really my focus was on the pandemic response and Americans.
I just wonder, and how do you think how do you explain how that happened? Because I know that when the task force, I presume, I guess I don't know, got together, and at the start was very just focused on the health response. So how do you explain that things like, whether you wear a mask or whether, what the safety precautions are at a meatpacking plant, just how the politics got infected it so quickly?
Well, we'd have these discussions in meetings. There'd be a lot of coordination. CDC would do a lot of the work and the research, and it was all science and data driven, right? It wasn't, these are people who dedicate their entire careers to working on pandemics and responding to situations such as this. And we had the greatest experts, I would say, in the world, right? We had Dr. Birx sitting there. We had Dr. Fauci, a lot of reputable, respectable people. And I think, unfortunately, when you have these influences behind the scenes, they can really hurt the situation, because what they'll do is they'll do it behind the scenes, or they'll bully you. And that is what you see kind of play out throughout this entire pandemic. And you see it by the discrediting of the doctors, or you'll see an article suddenly. You'll wake up and, this happened to a few times where we wake up the next day and there'd be an article about a doctor on the task force, and it would be discrediting them. And it was hurtful because these attacks were coming from within the White House, which is nonsensical if you think about it, because this is the White House's response to lead.
What was that about? Like, why the desire to discredit Dr. Fauci? Why the political team, was it because he was getting better coverage than Donald Trump? Was it because he was contradicting things that President Trump was saying? Like, why did they start waging this weird internal PR campaign against the doctors?
It was really about controlling all of the messaging. Can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure that I'm not losing you guys. Okay, great. It was just, it was this culture where you couldn't really speak out. And if you were being too forthcoming or honest about the data and the situation, all the doctors were trying to do was just communicate to the American people so that they would understand what was going on in their area or region, or just trends that they were seeing. And they weren't, it wasn't to cause alarm. It was just more so that communities and the medical practitioners out there and hospitals and everyone listening would be prepared and understand the situation that we were facing. And I think it just was a thing where if a doctor spoke out or said something that was a little bit too honest or forthcoming, they got in trouble for it.
Yeah. Sarah, so if folks haven't read this article, it's so great. We could honestly spend all day on it. It was called "Under Pence, Politics Regularly Seeped into the Coronavirus Task Force." Great in that it's revealing, horrifying, and its impact on all of us. But Sarah, Olivia and I were talking earlier. Obviously, she saw Vice President Pence up close and personal a lot over the last 2 years. So I want to hear your impression last night of the debate and how he acquitted himself, given all of the horrors of this administration, and see how that perspective squares with Olivia's.
Yeah, it's funny because I have been doing nothing but podcasts and, after live streams on the Bulwark, and I have very little good things to say about Vice President Pence and his performance. I feel a little embarrassed doing it in front of Olivia, though, because I know Olivia has a tremendous amount of respect for this man and worked with him for a long time. But I'm just, to be honest, I was so completely repulsed last night about the way specifically that Mike Pence handled the question around coronavirus, because, look, it's a tough question that he was asked, which is like, you're the head of the task force. Why has this been such a failure? Why was there a super spreader event? And his answer was to say, well, the American people, they're just great and they're rising to the occasion. And he had this answer that was clearly his prepared response, which was to make it about the American people and how they're reacting to the virus without ever addressing, even in the slightest way, the administration's role and failures around coronavirus. So that was kind of my take. I don't know what yours was.
Okay, well, hold on. Before we get to Olivia, I'm going to give you a different take slightly. So then, maybe you can balance, you can meet us in the middle. I think that anybody that would defend this president is gross and disgusting at a baseline level. But I thought he acquitted himself pretty well, given the turd that he was forced to shine last night. In a lot of ways, I thought that he, I know this is like a cliche buzzword on resistance Twitter, but normalized the administration in a lot of ways, like last night, and sort of avoided talking about the worst of the Trump excesses and outrages. And, I don't think he did much to actually help the campaign, but I think that he did a decent job of making just a really grotesque actions by this administration seem like relatively, within the bounds of normalcy. So I'm curious what you thought watching that last night, Olivia, and if that was a role that he would play internally too, which was kind of shine the rough edges of the president, which is a kind way of putting it.
Yeah. He was certainly in a more precarious situation last night, right? Given the White House outbreak and everything and the entire world watching this play out. It's got to be a tough position to be in when you're going into a debate and you're seeing what the president just did. This is sort of what Mike Pence, I think, faces on a daily basis. This is his reality. And I think, there were times last night when I was disappointed in a lot of the pivoting he did, but he pivots very well. He is well familiar with being in challenging media situations where he has to figure out how to defend the president. I will say that I am tired of him giving so much credit to the president. I'm tired of hearing him over and over say, President Trump did this, President Trump did that. It's just, I'm at the point where I'm just exhausted of hearing that message. And I don't know why I know why he insists on saying it. And he's constantly passing that credit to him. But I know that he is just trying to stay in his role, quite frankly. So, when you have that hanging over your head, I can't imagine. And I think in terms of some of the responses he gave last night and also some of his body language, I could tell that he didn't seem all that like himself. And I can imagine it was probably challenging for him to be in that position. And I'll say a lot of his answers weren't actual answers, right? And, but on the pros, like you said, Tim, I think, he handled the way he would handle himself during press briefings in the COVID task force. At times he would be speaking after the president and the president would say something that was completely insane and he'd be the follow act to that and he would calm the situation down and bring it back to somewhat of a reality and would kind of try to focus on either statistics or facts or just a different tone. And I think what you saw last night I'm grateful for it, was not the performance of what the president did last time in his debate, but you saw a much more, calmer, more respectful tone. I will say though, I did think that he sort of talked over Kamala Harris quite a bit. And I was a little surprised by that. I thought he would have been more respectful. I mean, he's been a talk show host. He handles himself well in debates and situations, but I did think that that was a little bit more of bulldozing than I expected from Vice President Pence.
Sarah and I have talked about this a lot, and I'm just wondering, as somebody from the inside, is like the Trump era can make you crazy when you're watching it from the outside, where you're like, I think I know what reality is. But then like Mike Pence comes up and talks, and it's like he's on Earth 2 and like talking about a whole different president and a whole different administration. And then like somebody like you comes out and talks and says the truth. For those of us who have been watching are like, thank God, like we have been seeing what is true. Like, what is the psychology of that inside? Like, is there, are they deluding themselves? Is this just intentional gaslighting, a combination of both? How does he balance these, like what's really happening with the president, what we all can see with our eyes, and this sort of fake Earth 2 administration that he talks about?
I think this is just the alternate reality of the White House. They're the masters of spin, and I would argue not great at spin, because they can't seem to actually handle responses or messaging quite well, and they're terrible at it. And I think it's amateur hour, but unfortunately this amateur hour is in the Oval Office, and these are the leaders of our country, which personally I find just appalling, because when you think of the national security implications on all sorts of areas outside of the pandemic, this is pretty disturbing. But I think, this culture where people are all in, and once you get on the Trump train, apparently people just stay on for whatever reason. And it's actually just disappointing to see a lot of these people continue to enable this behavior by the president. And quite frankly, I mean, Vice President Pence is enabling it, right? I mean, he's complicit in it. And I have struggled with that as a former staffer of his, and having respect for him. I know at times people, are just, they'll say to me, why do you continue to say you have respect for him? And I can totally understand that perspective. But for me, I mean, he was my boss, and I got to know him as a human being on a personal level. And that's just a different viewpoint, right? Different situation for me to be in. I may not agree with the way he spins. I may not agree with the way he continues to support and sort of continue to, express praise on the president, because I've certainly lived it with him. And I'm confident that he knows that this is just detrimental. But it's a very hard situation. It's a very hard position for me to be in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was going to take you off the hot seat, but I had one good stuff question I was going to say for the end, but you just brought it up right there. So I've got to ask it, and then we can take out the hot seat and talk more politics. But why are these people staying? Why are they staying? I'm not talking about the people who are fully bought in with Mr. Trump, which obviously is some percentage of the White House, but it's not 100%. And obviously you and Miles and Olivia and Elizabeth have come out, which we're so grateful for. And your testimonies have been so powerful. But all three of you say the same thing, that there are a lot of other people that you're talking to in there that either are giving you attaboys or saying they agree or saying, thank goodness someone's saying it. So why, I got it. It wouldn't have been my choice, but I got it for that first year, where you're like, we need good people in here. We can't let the crazies run the asylum. But now, with a month before the election, why? Why? Can you enlighten? Can you explain it to any of us?
I think, I don't know. I don't know why a lot of people haven't come forward. I keep hoping that they will. I certainly hear that, for example, for the New York Times story, I think I was not the only source on that story, right? I don't know who all the sources were, but I know that they, it's the New York Times, and I have a lot of respect for the reporter that did the piece, and he did a lot of investigative reporting, and a lot of people, had something to say. And so I think for some of the people, such as the experts, right, some of those people, like the doctors on the task force and some of the people leading public health agencies, I want them to stay because I'm scared at what would happen if they left right now in such a critical moment, such as areas such as the vaccine or therapeutics or things like that. Quite frankly, I think it could be dangerous by who would possibly replace them, because it would probably be someone who is drank the Kool-Aid or is willing to do whatever the president wants them to do. And those people, I think they have to hang in there for the sake of all of us. And I think they feel the pressure too. But then there are other staff that I, quite frankly, just don't understand. I've had these closed door conversations. I still get the messages of support, which I respect, but having these conversations behind closed doors does not help the country. And I think that's why it's important. And I encourage them still today. I mean, we still have time. We're still weeks out from the election, and these voices are important because we all know the reality of the situation.
Sarah, make the pitch. We'll cut this for YouTube and we'll promote it and geo-target the White House so that people can watch. What's your reaction? More people got to do it, right?
Yeah, people are dying, and I got to tell
in the White House.
Yeah, here's the thing, Olivia. This is, again, I don't mean to put you on that, but I just want to tell you about my dream. My dream right now is that Dr. Fauci or Dr. Birx, they wait maybe a couple more days here, but then they come out and they say, "Listen, America, you got to trust me on this. We've got to get this pandemic under control. You have to elect Joe Biden. I'm resigning today. I will work with the Biden administration the second that they are elected, but you have to understand how dire the situation is." Like, there's just something, because now I've heard enough people speak out. I'm well aware of how dire it is. Like, every people who are speaking out are making no bones about what's going on inside. And it's not just you guys. We've heard this from a lot of other people. But I guess there's this part of me that is like, what is it? I know that Dr. Fauci, I believe in him as much as I believe in any civil servant that I can see and don't know personally, right? I know that is a good person who has done amazing things for this country. Why doesn't somebody take a big stand? What holds them back? And I will make this direct pitch to camera that if you were in this White House right now, like, you can make a massive difference in the country. You can change the trajectory of history and save lives, save democracy by standing up and doing a thing that will be your proudest moment. It will be the proudest thing you have ever done, and you will make a material difference in people's lives, and you should do it. But
maybe Olivia,
to my question,
or to her question, or maybe Olivia, talk about your experience in doing it. I mean, not everybody's heard that, and what it made you feel. That's probably the best way to make the sale.
Look, I mean, it was a hard decision. It's a very personal decision, and it's something that you have to do because you strongly morally believe it's the right thing, and not for any other reason. But I will tell you that having done it now, as hard as it was to come forward, I mean, coming forward is really the hardest step. Just making the leap and committing and saying, I just have to do this because it matters so much, especially right now. This isn't like any other moment in our country's probably history. This is critical right now. And that is why I decided, at whatever cost of what might come, that I would do it. But I will say this, that I've received an outpouring of support that has been incredibly, just very, very emotionally touching to me. And it has meant a lot. And I feel that even, I faced a criticism. I mean, you heard the White House tell people that I had been walked out and fired. That is completely false, but that's what a water under the bridge now. I don't even care, because really it's cathartic, to be honest with you. I have been carrying this burden for so long, and I've gotten in the trenches, and I've been part of the fight. And, I felt, some sense of loyalty to the people around me, and I felt the sense of loyalty to my boss, and I get that. I totally get that. And I've never spoken out before, right? I'm a career intel officer. I've never talked to the media before. There weren't any quotes anywhere in reference to me along the way. And I never, talked about the pandemic while I was there. But I have to say that it's important to get the truth out there. And I think that once you do it, it's freeing. And as hard as it is, I mean, I still, sometimes I still, go to sleep at night and I worry and I get stressed out and I wonder what's going to happen next because I don't know what the future holds. But what I do know is that I can live with myself knowing that I told the truth at a moment when I think it really mattered. And I think that people will find that there's a network of support that's going to come forward and you're going to feel so much better on the outside. And quite frankly, I feel, when people ask me about Mike Pence, I think about this. I'm doing this because I'm speaking and telling people things that he is, as a vice president, cannot say. And if that's what it takes, if I have to say it, when I know he's probably thought it along the way and people around us have thought it along the way, then I'm going to say it for you. But I really encourage a lot of my colleagues to come forward. I mean, at what risk? I mean, we're seeing they don't care about anybody and they're putting lives at risk inside the White House, right? I mean, and I have to address something that really bothered me today. I was looking at the pictures of Mark Meadows at his daughter's wedding, I believe. And then I looked back on the fact that he was sitting next to me in meetings. He was walking past me in the West Wing consistently. And I had no idea that he'd basically gone to this mass gathering at a time when cases were spiking around the country, when guidance, I think in that state, was no gatherings of more than 10 people. And this is who's advising the president and is running the leadership team. So think about that when you're a White House staffer in this administration, and the fact that there's just no regard for you and your hard work and who you are, right? Because I'm thinking back horrified now at the fact that I exposed my family. And I exposed, I didn't see a lot of friends. I was very protective and making sure that I didn't expose myself because of the fact that I didn't want to hurt the vice president. I took that so seriously because I was around him a lot and I didn't want to expose the president. I would wash my hands so many times during the day, every time I touched something. And to look back on this and think, okay, wow, I'm sitting in a meeting. Masks weren't worn. We were sitting on top of each other. We're working next to each other. I would come into the West Wing, and all the while, you were doing everything that we are discouraging Americans to do because and that just, I think, paints the full picture for me of why I'm now glad that I spoke out, because it's fundamentally just wrong. All of it.
And we're so glad you spoke out. And I get that you, feel like he might be in a tough space, but actually it was the vice president's job to say something and to keep you guys safe, because this is insane. What Mark Meadows was doing is insane. And these meetings, they are putting regular public servants, people like you, at risk. People who are the maintenance staff, the kitchen staff, the woman that held the nuclear football has coronavirus, is in the hospital now. And they don't give a whit for anyone around them, Olivia. And it's just, it is astounding that now, given that more of these people are just not saying, I can't do this. I can't. I mean, it is, Mitch McConnell said today, I don't know if you saw this, Mitch McConnell said today that he kind of took a little backhanded slap at them, saying like, well, since May, I've always wanted to have masks around me. Well, it's like, okay, I'm happy that you're doing that, Mitch, but maybe it's a time for you to speak up on behalf of the damn public servants that are working in the White House that are getting exposed to the virus because of the Amy Coney Barrett buffet party, indoor-outdoor party. Okay, maybe you should speak up for them, because there are a lot of people in that White House that aren't, Mark Meadows, that don't think that they're above the CDC guidelines, that don't think they're above the rules that their own administration set. And they've been getting exposed. And that's the thing that pisses me off the most, if I'm being honest. And I don't know why. And I wish that there were, that the victims of this would feel like they had the opportunity to talk about that. And they do, with us. I don't know, Sarah, if you have anything to add to that before I move on to the questions.
No, I mean, I can go down a pit of righteous anger about all of this and get myself all worked up. But, I've done that multiple times today already, so I'll spare people.
I'm worked up enough for the both of us, I think, at the
I
moment.
appreciate that about you. But I will just say this. Sorry, now I'm going to...
Right. And another thing.
Here's the thing. People say that it is never too late to do the right thing. That is false. That is false. It is too late in 4 weeks for these people to do the right thing. Your time to get on the record, to be on the right side of history, to do the right thing is to speak up now. Because if you wait, I promise you, none of us are going to, and there's going to be a whole country that is going to look back on this time, and they are going to remember the people who spoke out well, and they are going to remember the people who were complicit with the kind of rage that only a history with a 2020 outlook can provide. And so I would give careful consideration to your reputations in the long term and think about doing the right thing before it is actually too late.
All right, we've got great questions from people. I'm going to get to them here. I do want to say first, make a little pitch. If everybody's here, you should know what RVAT is. But Olivia it was so tough and it was so courageous for her to come out and speak out and say what she thought. And she's taking a lot of heat over it. She's taking heat from the White House podium from generals. And so if Olivia can do it, you can. We have about 1,000 videos from regular Republican folks all across the country who have said that they've seen enough. And these videos matter. They do. When ads right now in the last month, ads are still important, but people are starting to tune those out. But if they see on Facebook, that their friend or their colleague or their cousin or their uncle is posting a video that's like, hey, I think this is important, will you watch this? They're going to watch that video. They're going to say, hey, I knew Olivia from high school. It's so amazing what she's doing. And and that person posted that on Facebook. Her friends are going to watch that video with much more interest than they're going to watch some paid ad. So please, if you've been on the fence about doing it, do the videos. If you're not a Republican voter against Trump, but a Democrat, we appreciate you. And find your favorites and post those on Facebook, and we'd be really grateful. Okay, questions. Before we get back into feelings, we've got a couple of factual questions we can knock out here from Sarah. Olivia, where are we at from your time in the task force, the national stockpile, risk of PPE with another potential wave coming in the fall? Has that now that we've had a few months, have they dealt with that, or what's the status to your knowledge? I guess you left a few months ago now, but
I think there was a lot of good work done in that between FEMA and the Air Bridge project, where they were bringing supplies from all over the world. I mean, if you think about it, we were competing for PPE with the world, right? I mean, we were all looking for the same type of supplies because we don't really make them. I mean, we don't make masks here. We rely on, quite frankly, China and other countries who were facing their own crisis domestically for their own governments. And so I think we've made a lot of progress there. I do know that they have, we have plenty of ventilators available. Although if I hear the vice president say no American has gone without a ventilator one more time, I'm probably going to throw something because I'm just sick of hearing it, because that's the only thing that we can really tout that we did well, perhaps. But supplies, I think the stockpile is in a good place. I think, and I do know that they have done a lot of hard work in that space.
That's good to know. That's good news. We need a little good news coming out of this dang thing. Okay, Sarah, we're going to get you riled back up again from ECAD. Why won't more Republican senators condemn and stand up to this president? The eternal question. Oh. But I want to add a kind of a layer to his question, because we've covered this ad nauseum over the months. Why not now? And Trump, the bottom is falling out of his polling right now. He is literally infecting and putting the lives in danger of their colleagues based on his recklessness. And there are other senators who are sick because of the president. We can just say that, because of the president's choices. Why not now? Thoughts?
This is such a good question because, were I them, even just as a CYA move, like now is the time. Like it was interesting, actually, Mitch McConnell, that quote that you referenced, it was interesting actually to see Mitch McConnell having that distance, kind of putting the Heisman up on Trump, because you don't hear that normally, right? He's normally pretty aligned. But here's the reason. The reason that I think they're not going to do it, oh, we lost Olivia, is that it's too late. I think that it is too late for them, and they know it. They have hugged this president very tight. They are on the train. The train's about to, I'm going to mix my metaphors here. Instead of the train, I think, let me ask you this. Let me put it back to you this way, Tim. Is there any honor in going down with the ship? Because that is what they're doing. Yeah, I agree. They should jump off. But look, I just think they're in too deep. And at this point, everybody's playing for their next gig, right? Like, why did Mike Pence do what he did last night? He didn't do it because he thinks Donald Trump's done a good job. He did it because he's looking at 2024, right? That is, Mike Pence has swallowed every piece of this because he wants to be president someday. And all of the people who work around him, this is one of the things Olivia decided to pass on. They want to be on the Mike Pence gravy train because they know he has a political future because he's been eating Trump's dirt for 4 years in order to get it. And the senators are the same way, right? Susan Collins, she bails on him now. She loses every plum lobbying gig and everything in conservatism, in the speeches and everything else. Like, there's nothing to do but take the ride now. Their time to get out, not people in the administration. You still have time, 3 weeks, clock is ticking. But these senators, it's over.
I'd add a second question to that, or a second consideration. I think a lot of these people were spooked by Access Hollywood.
Yeah.
And they got out, not on as much of a limb as I would have liked them to get out on, but they got out on a little bit of a limb, and it got chopped out from under them, and Trump ended up winning, and they didn't think he was gonna, and they're worried about the same thing happening again. I think that's the other psychological thing, in addition to all the things you just said. From Francie, Olivia, what about any lunch table discussions about the 25th Amendment when you were there? And when do we think is it time to look into that with the after the Evita moment?
Well, one can only hope, but I will say that that was just so egregious. I still can't get over it. I think behind closed doors, I will just say this. I think there is a school of thought out there that strongly believes that we would be better off if that happened.
Unbelievable. Here's from Tony. I'm going to take this one myself. How do you convince Republican friends who don't like Trump but are scared of full Democratic control of the government to vote for Biden? Well, there's no chance for full Democratic control of the government unless we get rid of the madman. That's the first thing that I would say. But here's the thing about Joe Biden. Joe Biden, during this primary, was ridiculed by the left time and time again for saying that he wanted to work with Republicans. All the other people on the stage said that all Republicans are Nazis and can't be worked with. He was made fun of on podcasts and on Twitter by all of the lefty commentators who said that he was losing it for doing it, and he never budged an inch on it. He never budged an inch. He said that Republicans can be worked with. We can fix this. We can get bring bipartisanship back. Is he right? I don't know. We'll find out hopefully in a year. But you have to trust in Joe Biden. And this is why we're called Republican Voters Against Trump. If you're in North Carolina and you want to vote for Joe Biden and Tom Tillis, that wouldn't be my vote, but that's a fine vote to make if you're worried about complete Democratic control of government. But Joe Biden is somebody that you can trust. Is not going to go off the deep end. And I know that the right conservative media is trying to scare everybody that he is, but every time he has done the right thing and avoided getting pulled to the left. So stick with him. I don't know, Sarah, you got or Olivia, anything to add to that?
I'll just say, look, Joe Biden he's kind of old, but he's also old school. And he's got this old school mentality that's actually like in a pretty positive way. He remembers the time when the Senate actually did bipartisan things. He's probably the one Democrat that has a good relationship with Mitch McConnell. And so I think that we were at the precipice of losing something that we didn't realize how delicate it was, but it's extremely important, which is the norms, the values, the institutions that help undergird the democracy and keep it strong. And I feel actually lucky that we have this institutionalist that has been nominated, whose first instinct is not to do things like court packing, not to do things like blow up the filibuster. He will try first to figure out how to work with Republicans. And in this hyper-partisan age, to have somebody willing to try is no small thing.
I think the only thing I would add to that is that, and I agree with all those points about Joe Biden, and I think back to the John McCain's of the world and hope that we can get back to that, right? That we can work across the aisle and work closely together, and we won't be so politically so extremely divided. But in terms of what I saw firsthand, and I would say this to Republican voters on the fence, this administration and Trump the president's very good at just flat out lying with some hypocrisy that I have never seen on this level. And the whole law and order phrase I find really offensive because I've been in the room. I've been there when he encourages, violence against people. I've been in the room when he talks about, the sort of the chaos in the cities playing in his favor. And that just doesn't do anything for our cities and our society and the safety. And when you look at, I know people are watching what's happening and you have a lot of divisiveness in terms of law enforcement, right? Well, I am pro law enforcement. And that's also why I'm against Donald Trump, because he is putting their lives on the line. He's using them. And
literally
people don't deserve to be used that way. They certainly don't. And it's making their lives harder. Whether people really understand that or not, it's making their job harder every single day. And he is doing it on purpose. And that, to me, is so fundamentally so un-American that I just have a serious problem with watching this continue to play out. And, if you're undecided, you're sitting there on the fence, I think you need to take all of these pieces of the puzzle and say, do I still want to vote for a president, knowing all of these things based on one major issue, perhaps that you're a one issue voter or something like that? But I think that this is the time to take a step back and really look at what you're voting for if you vote for Donald Trump, outside of that one small issue that you may be focused on. You got to think about what's happening to the cities and families around you.
Amen. Okay, we got 2 minutes. We got rapid fire. Just really quick, I saw in the chat a comment on the plot from a right-wing militia to kidnap, I guess, and kill Governor Whitmer. We have an ad up from Elizabeth Newman, one of Olivia's former colleagues, talking about how unserious this administration was in taking on right-wing domestic terror, how they took it out of the threats because basically the president knew that these people supported him. So watch and share that video. Two rapid fire questions. I get moderator's prerogative to ask Olivia one fun one, and then Sarah, we have the last one for you. How many people on the COVID task force do you think are voting for Joe Biden?
Well, I won't see the vice president's vote, but I was going to say, with the exception of one or two, probably all of them.
Lord. Unbelievable. Okay, Sarah, the last one was from Kim. What is RVAT going to do if Trump wins or if he tries to legally challenge the results of the election?
Well, those are two very different scenarios. If he wins just outright, I do think that Tim and I, we have an escape route through a tunnel where we may need to. Yeah,
you can join.
Right, that's right. Yes, there's got to be.
We're landing in Uruguay. We come out the other side in Uruguay.
This is not a person who is big enough to just forget about his political enemies once he's in a position of power. I say that jokingly, but I actually don't think it's that funny. So if he wins, look, I mean, the honest answer is if he wins, we'll keep fighting him with everything we have to stand up for and push back through whatever avenues are still available to us. I would be shocked if that was the case, though. I think much more likely is the second scenario where Donald Trump is trying to do something to discredit the outcomes of the elections. We're going to be involved in a number of different efforts, especially in Pennsylvania, to make sure that every ballot is counted, to ensure that the media understands that we are probably not necessarily looking at an election night, although if it goes really, really well, we will, but there may actually be an election week in which ballots are being counted. I think there's going to have to be a massive mobilization to fight back against his efforts to delegitimize the election and try to, delegitimize all the mail-in ballots that are coming in historic numbers because of the pandemic. And so RVAT will be, and our parent organization, Defending Democracy Together, will be all over that, because that is probably, it's going to be very difficult for Donald Trump to recover at this point. The polling environment has been very stable, but the voting environment has never been more unstable. And so it's going to take all of us, all of you, to make sure that you vote, make sure you've got a plan, make sure ballots are being, your friends are turning in their ballots, that you're going to ballot boxes, and let's all protect democracy together.
Thank you, guys. Olivia, thank you for your courage, your mettle, your backbone, for speaking out. I'm just so grateful for it. And Sarah, for starting this little deal we've got going. I think it's making a difference. So thank you guys both. Happy to be on here with you. And we will see everybody else next week.
Thank you for being RVAT and giving me a platform or a way to tell the truth. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you, and I mean that wholeheartedly.
All right. Well, group hug, Zoom hug, since we can't do it in person. Group hug. All right. We'll see you. Thank you, Olivia.
Take care.